Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad.
I sent you an email back. The ML POC credits is like the only path right now, but come January 1, new stuff open up and we don't even know what it is yet. So
Oh,
just
okay.
so let me know if those POC credits would work, or if not, let's just wait till January 1, set up a sync and see what programs open up.
Okay. So you know that there's like other stuff in the pipe.
There are always new programs. I know the ones that are paused right now are like the ones I can't leverage. There are a lot that's like not available right now.
Yeah.
For you.
I mean, I know the rules around double dipping AWS credits. We've just exhausted our Activate credits that we got through RBC. So just, compute is a good chunk of our burn right now. So we're just sort of seeing what else we can do.
Have you done this is a public venue, but I'll ask. No one else is on yet. Have you done an EDP or a commitment or reserved instances or a savings plan or any of that yet?
No, we haven't done those things yet. Mostly because it's like we're growing and it's difficult to predict what our infrastructure is going to evolve to. Like I figured, if we stabilized and we knew we were going to need certain compute resources for a certain period of time, and that they were going to remain relatively stable, then we would do things like reserved instances. But as of right now, it's sort of like, we're provisioning new environments, like testing them out, taking them down again, like stuff will scale as more data streams come online. So it's hard to predict.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Nice to
Hi
see
there,
you.
Dave.
Hey, Mikhail. How are you?
Nice to meet you. Very good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah. Thank you both for joining.
Yeah, of course. Do we have a good audience for today? Any idea who's going to join?
Yeah, it was a big audience. Let me just see what we got here. I'm just going to put myself on mute for a second, okay, guys?
Sure.
Let's set up a little, what we can do is a sync, Mikhail. Like, I'm happy to review it, get your account manager on and figure out how we can help.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. We are recording. Nice. I like your office.
Thank you. It took me a while to get set up.
It's nice. I like the one random plant in the background.
Yeah, I need to get some more plants.
Plants are the best. I mean, we kind of gave up our apartment for the rest of quarantine and the pandemic, and we'll move in somewhere after things stabilize, but living out of hotel suites right now.
Oh man, that was me earlier this year. It sucked.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, Jennifer, how's it going?
Good. Did I miss anything important?
We were talking how to reduce Mikhail's costs on AWS before everyone joined. He's bribing me, He's like, hey, I'll do this panel, but...
Does it work? Can I do the same thing?
It's like, I'm pretty sure I just share exactly what I can and can't do, and then figure out what else we can do past that once it becomes available. How's your day going, Jennifer?
No, good. It's actually we're having a storm in California, which doesn't happen frequently. So
I'm here as well. I'm in San Francisco, and we're gonna drive to Tahoe right after this. So
oh, nice.
It's not gonna kill us,
Yeah.
What kind of storm are we talking about?
No, but come on. San Francisco has bad weather all the time. I'm talking South Bay, right?
But what's like San Francisco bad weather? Is it like, you know, a couple of clouds, some fog? Like
Yeah, some fog, I guess, right?
like we get blizzards, like we get buried.
Yeah, that's true, right? It's like,
Toronto?
hey, Ari actually has a nice picture of like the fog, the fog behind him.
It's very thematic.
Carl the Fog.
Mikhail, where are you located?
I'm living in Alberta nowadays. I'm in Lethbridge.
Okay, I was going to complain over the fact that I had to listen to somebody from but two people from Silicon Valley complain about the weather, but I think you trumped me. You even trumped me in Toronto. So
We don't like using that word anymore. We're over that word.
oh really? Got you. I wasn't aware.
It's a faux pas. Yeah?
Oh really?
Apparently.
We'll just cut that recorded part out, Dave. You know, like
We'll edit all this. Don't worry.
great. Oh man.
No, so Ari, like how, like you're starting by like letting people introduce themselves, or what's the plan?
Yeah, of course. But we're like 4
Okay.
minutes away, and I think people are joining before it starts. So I guess we're just going to be talking and welcoming people in a very conversational way.
That's right. So yeah, we'll let people trickle in. I just sent a message out again just to remind people. Yeah, and then we can get started in a couple minutes. Why don't we wait? We'll wait until I think it's about, what time is it there? 3 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe a couple minutes after 3. Give people a chance to trickle in.
2:56 right now. We still are waiting for 2 panelists too, so
Okay.
we might want to let all the panelists join before. Although between Jennifer and Mikhail, I think there's a lot of info they can share.
I think so too. Actually, Jennifer, we spoke in the past, and I know Sheldon, who's joining, has also spoken at some of the events that we've done in the past. It's good to have you back.
I always tell people that was one of my favorite conferences to talk to. And I'm not just saying that because it's you. I actually say it to people.
Oh, hey, Bruce.
Hello. Oh, sorry, that's really dark.
Sheldon.
Hey guys, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
All right.
So, let's see.
So we're
Okay.
just waiting on Sam.
Okay. People are going to trickle in here late, but that's okay. How you doing, Sheldon? Long time.
Yeah, I know. We spoke. Was it on election day or no? I think it was after.
You must have been after. Geez, I can't remember now.
So Sam, how did this compare to your predictions? Sheldon, how did it compare to your predictions? Sorry, I got Sam.
Oh man, I got home at 7:30. I gave my son to my wife. It was like a Super Bowl for me, and I had 4 monitors up. I had 5:30. I had my analysis going. I think there was a time in between 9:30 and 10. I was fearing the worst, but then a couple key things happened that turned the tide, and I was up till maybe 3:30, thinking, yeah, I think he's got this, and then I woke up thinking, he's probably got this. So I think we should just we should just make the panel about analyzing election night. Like
No, so like you should analyze what happened after, which is even more interesting, I guess.
Sheldon, how your healthcare models can be applied to political analysis and predictions.
exactly, you know, explaining the unexplainable. That's what we need to focus on.
Cool. So, all right, 1 minute left. We're gonna have people trickling in. I think everybody here is minus. We're waiting on one more person, and then that's going to be who's on screen, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Ari?
Yeah, so it's going to be 4 folks and myself, Sheldon, Sam, Mikhail, Jennifer.
Okay. So there we go. That's better. Sorry about that. We've had an interesting day. So the conference platforms on Hopin, we've been working through Zoom. So different combinations of hosts and co-hosts and screen sharing and non-screen sharing. It's been it's been a day, but
Yeah.
I think we're just grappling the Zoom settings now. So yeah, we're figuring it out.
Oh, good.
Off their notifications, just a little reminder. I'll do it too, and cell phones before we start.
Oh, Jeffrey's here. How's it going, Jeffrey Hunter? We'll get the chat bot going.
Hello, I'm here. I'm kind of eating lunch and watching Netflix and listening in, so I'm just going to ask my question, then kind of fade into the background.
Okay. Anyways, so it's 6 o'clock. I'm gonna just start by welcoming everybody here. I think we will wait a couple more minutes because Ari, we're waiting on one more person.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we can still get started. And Ari, why don't you tell? Oh, there's Sam. Perfect timing. Yeah. So Sam, is your I just want to make sure we can hear you.
Hello.
There we go. That's great. Thank you. So yes, thank you everybody for joining. To those who are participating as attendees listening here, I know that some of you would have attended some of the sessions that we had, the workshops. So thank you for those as well. Tomorrow we're going to be on Hopin. The links being sent for those who registered for today. For those who didn't, you should have a link already for that. So that's going to be the platform where all the talks are being hosted over the next 2 days. Whova, as well as the app that we've used just for communications, is going to be going on after the event as well. You can access it on your phone. For those who are hiring or looking to hire or looking for a position rather, there's about 40 jobs on there and there's some interesting conversations. I've also uploaded some GitHub repos as well as some slides from some of the sessions from today. But all of these will be recorded and sent to everybody as well, provided that you've joined the conference, right? So anyways, with that being said, I'm going to kick it over to Ari. I won't spend too much time. I know people are trickling in. We have 45 people here. I think we're expecting over 100. So we'll get started. And Ari, yeah, I don't actually have that much more to say. It's good to meet everybody as well and some familiar faces. But I'll kick it over to you, Ari. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Well, first, thank you for having us and putting this amazing group together and allowing us to host this startup showcase. The impetus of this startup showcase really came about with working closely with a bunch of Canadian accelerators, incubators, VCs, and specifically startups. And we really wanted to highlight the amazing work that's going on in Canada and beyond, and talk about like the environment, the startup environment, the AI environment, and have these amazing, talented founders share their experiences with you. So a little bit about me, I'm Ari Kalfayan. I'm a senior BD manager, specifically focused on AI ML startups here at AWS. And really like what that means in layman's terms is I am obsessed with helping startups grow. Like that's what I do day in and day out, help founders with whatever challenges they face on the technology side or the business side of the equation, and really help them scale. So I kind of have a dream job here. And with that, I'm excited to showcase 4 amazingly talented entrepreneurs today and ask them some questions. So with that, if you guys can each introduce yourselves, your companies, and something that you're doing to keep yourself sane in these crazy times. So let's kick it off with Mikhail.
Thanks, Ari. So my name is Mikhail Klassen. I am the CTO and one of the co-founders at a company called Paladin AI. We're based in Montreal, and we're a company of about 9 people, a seed stage startup, and we help airlines and flight training centers improve their pilot training operations using an AI platform that mines data taken from flight simulators and other training devices and synthesizes that into a profile that highlights the strengths and weaknesses of an individual pilot.
Great.
Oh, and how I'm staying sane. Just doing some home improvement projects, something, with my hands, not typing code or, sitting on Zoom calls, looking at screens. It's nice to go offline for a bit.
That's great. Sam, you want to go next?
Ooh. Hi, my name's Sam, CEO, one of the founders of Phenomic AI. We are developing, basically looking to target a specific area of cancer biology. So looking to reactivate our immune system to sort of attack cancer. The platform we developed basically uses machine learning to process sort of complex systems or process experimental data coming from complex systems where you've got lots of different cell types growing together. We're now at sort of just gone through our seed round, brought in a bit more capital, sort of non-dilutive as well, and looking to basically develop drugs forward ourselves internally, and so now gearing up to do sort of animal studies on them, see if they work, see if we can cure mice in cancer. What am I doing to stay sane? I might have the best answer here. So I ditched Toronto. I'm now in Costa Rica, and I'm on a surf beach, remote working.
I was wondering why it was so green and sunny in your location.
Damn, I just got back from 2 months in Mexico, so man.
Love it.
Jennifer, you want to go next?
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Jennifer. I'm the founder and the CEO of Alectio. So we are a small startup, 13 people currently. We're less than 2 years old, currently 13 people. And what Alectio does is basically everything we do is based on the thesis that machine learning teams usually don't need as much data as they might imagine. So basically sort of our belief is that in order to scale up, you can try to scale down. So basically with that belief in mind, basically we believe that a lot of the so basically I come from different perspective. From number one, I am here to speak as a founder, the challenges of building a machine learning startup, but at the same time, from a user perspective, or how basically to scale up, you might have to sometimes rethink your operations, right? So basically what we do is something we coined as data curation. So basically identifying within a training data set which data you should really focus on. And so prior to starting Alectio, I was basically I had a lot of interesting positions that led me to build machine learning teams from scratch, sometimes in I'm gonna say even adversarial settings at times, always in challenging situations where, you had to deal with different business units, not necessarily getting what machine learning was supposed to be at. And so what I'm doing to stay sane, I wish I could travel. Unfortunately, I have kids, so it's not that easy for me. But ever since COVID started, I've started spend a decent amount of my free time doing playing VR games. So it's just something I just discovered recently is pretty nice to basically stay sane and stay fit at the same time. So.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Sheldon, why don't you wrap up intros?
Absolutely. So Sheldon Fernandez, CEO of Darwin AI. We are a 3-year-old company based out of the University of Waterloo, or rather connected to the University of Waterloo. We have really unique IP that purports to crack the black box problem that is currently kind of plaguing deep learning. And so we do explainable AI and do it for specific industries, aerospace and defense, healthcare, industry, and so forth. And it's been quite a fascinating journey to take very academic IP and turn it into product that the enterprise can use. So look forward to talking about that. Something that I'm doing to keep me sane, I'm a huge chess fan, chess guru. I've met Gary Kasparov and Magnus Carlsen, and it's really sad because I have about 100 chess books, but I'm a very weak player. But I've taken up to watching The Queen's Gambit, which is a Netflix special, 8-series special on chess, and I would highly recommend it. It's a really, really good series. And that and taking care of a 2-year-old keeps me incredibly busy. So that's my little claim to fame.
Love that. I've heard that more often. Just playing with my kids is a common answer. So as we get started here, we're going to do a bit of question and answer with the panel. We have a set of questions that we've shared ahead of time. We'll direct the conversation and then leave 15 to 20 minutes at the end where the audience can ask anything. So we'll leave that time open, and feel free to jump on video at the end and share your questions with the panel. So let's go. So first question, I think just piggybacking off of Darwin and Sheldon, what's the biggest problem right now blocking the adoption of ML and ML products in the business world?
Yeah, and I can say this because we've engaged the enterprise quite significantly. It's really organizations understanding and internalizing what machine learning and what the second wave AI is, and what business problems they can tackle with this new machinery. You know, imagine, you know, the internet in 1991 before it became mainstream, and trying to sell that to a newspaper who didn't even understand what a modem was. Like, that's kind of, you know, challenge is you'll talk about all this fancy, you know, technology and theoretical advancements and so forth, and they're just trying to collect data. So I think it's the gap between, you know, where they're at as an organization, the problems they need to solve, and what can legitimately be tackled by machine learning and the amount of education that takes. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that certainly I see.
Jennifer, you had a strong opinion there.
Yeah, actually, so I will echo most of what Sheldon said, right? I mean, so basically, like from my experience, basically, maybe I can share that with everybody here. So I basically like built the entire like current like machine learning function at Atlassian. I was basically their first like chief data scientist, and I mean that was an interesting experience for me because, as everybody knows, like Atlassian is an extremely mature technology company. But when I got there and I took the job, basically like they came from a perspective where they had money, they had data, or they believed they had good data or sufficiently good to build machine learning product with it, and they believed that all they had to do is like hire like a bunch of PhDs with like a sophisticated like you know like degrees, and basically like they would get the ball rolling, right? And so unfortunately, like of course, like I can say like firsthand, this didn't really work really well at first, right? Because something that's extremely important that I think fortunately now is becoming more mainstream knowledge, like a machine, like it takes a village to build a machine learning function and to build a machine learning product, right? I mean, so basically like there is no way that a machine learning team can function in a vacuum without like good ties to a product team, product managers that understand how to build product, like machine learning products, ties to the business folks, and basically like the proper like support from like a data engineering team. So basically one of the problems we had is basically like there was no budget initially at Atlassian for a data engineering team, right? I mean, so I think for me, like the biggest blocker is basically like people understanding that getting started with AI or machine learning takes more than just like posting a data scientist job out there. I will add like another challenge I see as well is like basically like this notion of like people don't still understand well what the difference between a data engineer and a data scientist, a data analyst, or like an AI engineer is, and basically like this leads to like major confusion when you're trying to build a team from scratch.
I guess, yeah, I'll jump in. Yeah, so again, so when we were starting up, we were like, we took a bit of a different angle to this. So, and originally we're trying to sell software products to pharmaceutical companies to help them do screening. But you know what, people were sort of excited by it, and really, but what we saw happen is they sign up a sort of proof of concept study, pay a bunch of money, like far too much money for the POC study. We're like, yeah, okay, cool, we'll take the money. And then they do exactly the same sort of screen they always used to do, but with deep learning. And so, it was a bit faster and a little bit easier, but nothing, exceptional. And really what we realized is it's going to take a lot of effort to educate people, how deep learning could allow them to do an entirely new set of experiments they'd not done before. So instead, what we decided to do was basically just hire the few people that got both sides of the equation and just do it ourselves. And so now we're doing the full vertical internally, which I think is a situation you'll see be replicated across the venture capital space. We're seeing it right now. Companies that are learning and have domain expertise on board as well are getting funded with great success.
It begs the question, is the business side harder or the technology side harder in starting a machine learning or deep learning company?
Business.
It depends 100%. On your background.
Not even a question.
Not even a question.
But you're also asking like a room full of like data scientists, and like, what's easier, their wheelhouse or like building a business, right? Building a business is hard always, but data science should be pretty easy for a data scientist.
Maybe.
Hope.
Let's just say that's the case. How have you gotten around it?
Yeah. I would say the key challenge, I mean, it's not really, it's more business or data science it's like, where do they hit each other? Like, where's it a real business problem that data science has an actual meaningful impact on? And when you find that intersection, you're sorted. But it's trying to, often you're like, not business problem, great model, or business problem really can't be solved with AI, like way too far beyond it. And so can it be solved with AI, and is it a real business problem? And when you've got that crux, you've nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say I'll let you know when we figure it out. But it's really that. It's really marrying the capability with what the business wants in a way that's compelling, and that's an iterative journey. Especially because the market's changing and the technology's changing as you go through the process. So it's trying to hit a moving target with two arrows almost.
I mean, I personally feel like compared to a few years ago, like it's getting better. I mean, I think a lot of companies have learned the hard way that basically, okay, this is not the way things work. I see a lot of analogies. So probably this is like a long time for idea of us. So probably very few of us were in the industry back in the days. But like when people started promoting agile as being the ways for software engineering, like this also coincided like with the time where people started fragmenting the software industry or the software engineer profession into different pieces. People started specializing in different things. And I think I'm starting to see the same thing happening here, that more and more so I see specialized job description, which means that even companies that are starting to get started kind of understand the differences between the different roles. I see fewer and fewer descriptions where you see a mix of a data analyst and a machine learning scientist or a machine learning engineer position. But the sad truth is people had to learn the hard way, right? I mean, I don't feel like we had to make the same mistake, because this is so similar to all the things we've seen in technology, in software engineering, for example.
Great. So, I mean, on that front, I mean, it's still very much the wild, wild west. Everyone in this room is either participating in it in some form or a data scientist, right? So you're working with a lot of big orgs. A lot of you are enterprise focused. What are some of the common mistakes, and how do you manage their expectations going into an org that doesn't do a lot of AI?
Getting access to data. That's like a huge challenge for an early startup. It's like this chicken and egg problem where it's hard to sell a product if you don't have the data to train your models on, but the business customer that you're trying to sell to is going to be hesitant to buy something until they can see some results. So, trying to build the kind of trust that they will share data with you, that it's the right kind of data, that it's something that you can use, or trying to bootstrap your way with synthetic data or some public data sets that you can find access to. Those early stages can be really challenging unless you're building a product on well-established public data sets, let's say something on CFAR, or where there's good high quality data available that's open.
Yeah, I would add to that, it's not just your access to the data, it's their access to the data sometimes. We've worked with organizations where one group wants to do something and there's 5 adjacent groups that in the aggregate have the data, but getting it collated and synthesized and standardized will take 6 months. And so I completely agree, Mikhail. The first question is, do you have the data and do you have access to it? If not, we'll re-engage you in 6 months. So it begins with data in this realm, and I think that certainly mirrors my experience.
No, so my perspective is so basically maybe I have a slightly different perspective here, because typically the customers we engage are basically usually past the phase where people aren't necessarily starting, but they're trying, they reach the point where, okay, I get my first model, what do I do now, right? And so basically we're getting in at this point where people start seeing they're disappointing with their return on investment. So one of the problems that I see, the next generation of problem for people who get past the getting started with machine learning step is going to be I got my first model in, and basically like my operations are not optimized yet, so my return on investment is very disappointing, right? I mean, so I think like there's a lot of like statistics out there basically like stating that like a large fraction, like typically more than 50% of machine learning organizations or people getting started with machine learning typically like almost regret getting started, or at least want to see more, right? And I mean, I think this is where, you know, like basically what we do, like actually I believe like what Sheldon does as well in terms of explainability, everything like that's associated to like cloud technologies for like improvement of efficiency needs to happen. But like for me, like I'm worried about the next generation blocker as well, right? I mean, basically organizations like, God, I just like basically like invested $5 million in this fancy machine learning team. I'm not seeing a return on investment. I'm just gonna lay everybody off. And this happens more frequently than we think of, right? I mean, so I think like another thing that needs to be talked about is basically like, how do you put your operations in a state where basically like people can actually start seeing like a return on investment on their efforts?
Cool. Thanks for sharing, Jennifer. So I think that begs the question, right? We have a lot of different folks on this call. We have AI practitioners, we have wannabe founders, we have founders, folks that are going to start companies soon. What are some of the most important lessons in founding a machine learning company that you've learned that you can share, and in the hopes that you're actually like helping them through a challenge that they're going to face here in the next little bit?
I want to comment on something that Jennifer said, that like it takes a team to really build a company around AI. I mean, I started off as a data scientist, taught myself machine learning, started prototyping some models, and like it's fun messing around in a Jupyter notebook and getting something that, you know, gets some nice results. Putting that into like an operational setting, behind a data pipeline, behind, you know, all of the different like version control, continuous deployment, you know, code quality checks, like the whole like architecture that goes behind building a technological solution for a customer, that is a whole other learning curve. And, you know, we were very fortunate in that early on in our company, we found a cloud architect who knew a bit about machine learning, but, you know, had deep knowledge of AWS. And we found a data engineer who was great at building these data pipelines, you know, getting data into databases that were cleaned and processed so that our, you know, pure data scientists could then build models against that, you know, in a SageMaker notebook, say, which then, you know, the DevOps team could then operationalize. Like it took 3 or 4 people to form that core team to do something that, you know, you can build a company around.
Yeah, if I could add to that, AI will be a small portion of your business, overall business success, right? And marry that AI to some business problem that is significant and potentially lucrative, and don't be afraid, and in fact, expect the journey to be nonlinear. It's not going to be a straight march to the problem. You solve it and you have a paying customer. There's a lot of exploration, and therein lies the opportunity. So embrace the ambiguity, which sounds a little bit contradictory, but that there is an element of searching for any machine learning startup that is just part and parcel of finding your identity.
You know, like the one thing I would add that basically like, so like founding a machine learning company, basically like something that I believe is like actually very important is like sort of like be clear about the expectation. So basically the reason why I'm saying this is like, look, you know, like, you know, the saying, like basically when you fundraise, it's AI, basically like when you actually work with it, it's pretty much like, well, like you call that machine learning, usually you deal more with like regression models than you do with deep learning models in reality, right? And basically like, I think, of course, there is still a lot of hype around like AI. When you fundraise, of course, you're going to state like, we have this amazing technology to do X, Y, Z, and so forth and so on. And then what I realized later on is basically when you like, because of that hype, like the customer, like the uneducated customer that's going to consume this technology has like the similar expectations. Like I was promised like AI, like artificial general intelligence, And basically when they see the product in action, basically like we like basically like you have to be clear that basically why are you an AI company doing this? You're here to solve a specific problem, right? I mean, so just to illustrate that, like this is something that was like a pretty recent piece of news. Like recently, like there's a company called like Bossa Nova Robotics that basically like builds like robots to try to like basically like do inventory management, and their biggest contract was Walmart, right? I mean, and so on. And just like a few weeks ago, basically like Walmart apparently like realized that they can get the job done cheaper or better. I don't know exactly what the reason was, and basically they decided to basically like stop the contract to basically use humans to do inventory management for them. So that's basically a step backwards, right? I mean, from a technology adaptation standpoint for Walmart, right? And basically like I think like here is just like basically like what were the expectations of a user like Walmart in this case, right? And was it like, did they want to achieve a specific accuracy, and basically like could they achieve this better accuracy with humans? And that company should have known better before getting engaged like this far, and so forth and so on, right? I mean, so the question like at the end of the day from the user like or the customer perspective is like, do you want to adopt AI because you want to look cool, because you want to reduce cost, because you want to do things human cannot do, or humans are not good at scaling, right? I mean, so is it like a scalability problem? Is it an operational problem? And if you're not clear when you build your product into what you're trying to do exactly, not just in terms of like what product you're going to build, but what, you know, like what can this product do that a human cannot do, right? Because at the end of the day, we're doing AI to do things that, you know, like humans cannot do, or humans cannot do at scale, right?
Cool. I'm going to jump in. Yeah. Great. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I guess if for people starting out a company, the way I think about it, so there was a period of time, I think, where you could have an AI company doing AI for X, and someone would invest in you and someone would like buy you up because, well, Google or one of the big techs would buy you out because, you know, they wanted 1,000,001 machine learning engineers and they're trying to just blanket the field. That time is gone. So I think you now need to be solving like real problems. I don't know. So this doesn't apply for all industries. Software is, you know, a bit more dynamic. But certainly for like the big, the big old school industries like oil, pharmaceuticals, agriculture, like my advice would be go find like the most cynical, like oldest person, like as much gray hair as possible, who's like completely skeptical and hates AI and and doesn't even know how to operate their phone. And if you can persuade them that you're onto something, and sign them up as an advisor, and then try and persuade them or get them excited. And if you can like solve a problem that they understand, then you're gonna shoot for the stars then. Yeah.
So switching gears quickly, I mean, I know I got into AI like just because I want to make sure there's like a benevolent AI, and sustainability is something important to me. And AI is moving really, really quickly. So let's combine that and let's talk about what is the state of the art in AI ML, and what are some use cases, companies, things you're seeing in ML research that will really apply for AI for good or AI for sustainability.
I'm going to jump in quick. Funny one there. Benevolent AI was the name of an AI biotech company, and it turned out to be a financial mess, borderline fraud. There's an FT exposure on it. But yeah, in terms of certainly OpenAI, obviously leading the field there with all their sort of exciting technologies. And I think really it's the academics that have academics generally are pretty good-hearted. Vector Institute, incredible stuff. Just follow the papers and the academic research. Sure.
So Ari, like basically, I guess your first question was basically like state of the art, like for machine learning, right? I mean, so basically, like I agree with everybody here that basically, like the business side of machine learning is a lot harder to manage than like the technology side. But I will add that, like while the business side is hard, I would say the technology side is treacherous, right? I mean, so basically, like what I mean by this is like a lot of people in the industry like grant more capability to machine learning than what can be achieved today, right? I mean, so I think like everybody here will also agree that basically you only get models if you have enough data, if you have enough good data, if you have like the right processes in place and so on and so on, right? But take somebody out of like school, right? I mean, somebody just got their PhD or their master's in machine learning, they will come out believing that deep learning is a finished field. Basically, there's nothing else to discover, right? And basically, because they know how to build like, or how to train like a AlexNet or like a ResNet 18 on ImageNet, this is all they need to know, right? And from my perspective, there's so much more research to be done in terms of like even like defining the right activation functions, like basically like multimodal learning and so forth and so on, right? And there's like so much stuff we're still discovering, and we're just starting to scratch the surface. I think it's dangerous that we have such a large portion of the machine learning community that believes that deep learning is like a closed topic, and basically it's just like, it is what it is, we understand the math and that's all that needs to be done, right? And like in the same mindset, right? And so this is where I get like technology is dangerous. In the same state of ideas, I'm always like flabbergasted that like how much people don't realize like how like unsustainable the way we do machine learning today is, right? I mean, so basically like I think there's more and more papers and more publications these days on like how much like carbon emissions you get from like training a fairly simple model, right? I mean, even more so I think Google like just like maybe 6 months, 9 months ago, like basically like stated like how expensive it was to train one of their like most sophisticated models and how much like carbon emissions you are getting from this. Again, I believe this is very dangerous because like people need to realize there is a lot more work to be done before this becomes like sustainable financially, and this becomes sustainable from a environmental standpoint. Right?
Just a comment there on like the research possibilities. Like if you think of the human brain as a large neural network, we can train on relatively few examples a massive network with trillions of connections and use, burn very few calories in the process. Compare that to a data center that's training, GPT-3 with billions of parameters and consuming who knows how much energy in the process. Like there's a lot of room to optimize. We just haven't found out how to do it yet.
So to your point, 100%, like it really shocks me, or like basically like whoever believes that like, okay, we're good, like basically we're so close to like artificial general intelligence, for me, like this is pure complacency, right? I mean, it's just like, we're so just at the beginning of everything that needs to be done. And exactly like what you just said, like Mikhail, I think it's just like it's like the room for improvement is amazing to me. That's exciting. Like that shouldn't be a room for concern. But basically, like you like whoever feels like yeah, I mean, like we've been there, done that, and there's nothing more to the story. Like deep learning is what it is, and it's just a matter of like applying this on like a new data set. It's absolutely not true.
So Mikhail, you said something that touched a nerve. So 4 months after starting Darwin AI, my wife got pregnant with our first child. And so I often say I have an artificial intelligence startup and a biological intelligence startup, and it's been amazing to see them grow together. I read a wonderful book on the Christmas holidays written by a U of T professor called The Promise of Artificial Intelligence, Reckoning and Judgment. And he says, second wave AI, which is what we're talking about, is like really good at registering the world, which is giving you some quantification of the things in your world, how many cars there are on the street, how this protein might fold, et cetera, et cetera. But as human beings, and his language is interesting, he goes, we reckon with the world, like you engage the world as the world, you understand the world as the world. And when I was reading this, my son, who was 14 months at the time, was like taking a toy giraffe and just trying to balance it on a chair and doing that for 20 minutes. And I'm looking at him thinking, like, that is reckoning with the world. Like, and so I completely agree with what you're all saying. Like, deep learning is impressive, but compared to the complexity of the human brain and the fact that my son can now speak and do these rich contextual understanding that we still can't do with AI, like we have a long way to go, but that's also the excitement, like the state of the art that's coming out there trying to understand biological systems through this machinery, to me is quite exciting.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I wanted to say something to your point on sustainability, Ari, and we were talking about the energy costs of training these neural networks. One of the things that really encourages me is the commitment that all of the main cloud computing providers have made towards carbon neutrality, including AWS, massively trying to reduce their carbon footprint, source all of their energy from wind and solar, and that that encourages me because I feel guilty using a lot of heavy compute power for a model that I'm going to have to retrain again in a month when new data comes in.
So just like, I mean, I actually gave a talk on that topic recently. So basically just a few numbers that to me come to mind. So basically also talking about sustainability, right? I mean, so from us the usage of data centers, right? I mean, I believe right now 2% of carbon emissions in the world are associated to big data and data centers. What to me is kind of concerning, and I agree with Mikhail, basically there's a lot of effort for our carbon neutrality, or at least using clean energy to power data centers. But I think the projection is by 2025 the number should be around 5 to 6%, right? And that's certainly probably the only industry that's not trying to reduce yet, right? I mean, we are not thinking about this. So it's 2% of carbon emissions is extremely small compared to agriculture, compared to the clothing industry and so forth and so on. But those other industries are trying really hard to reduce that number, and we're not there yet. Why? Because the amount of data is still exploding, right? And yeah, I mean, so this is something that to me is super important to bring attention to. On the good side, though, is basically there's a concept that I mean, there's actually a terminology for basically data that's not useful. So basically, there's something called dark data, which basically is the data that companies collect, but either they don't know how to access it, and or they don't know it even exists. So basically, it's a past employee collected this data. It's there, but nobody even knows it's there, right? And typically, the number is somewhere around 55-60% of data sitting in data centers is dark data, right? And there's another number that basically it's you should check the numbers, but it's pretty amazing that basically at the end of the day, I believe 90% of unstructured data that's being collected is never used at all, right? I mean, and so it's just there's a lot of room for improvement in there as well.
I mean,
if you ever, go for it. I was going to say, if you ever feel bad about yourself, just think about all those people mining Bitcoin. at least we're using data centers for some purpose.
That's a good point. And I think
carry on.
When I look at the carbon pledge to be zero carbon by 2040, yeah, of course we want to move it as quickly as possible, but that excites me, right? It actually, as a human, that's the direction that I want to go, and that's the direction I want to see our company go. And it's 10 years ahead of the climate agreement, the Paris Agreement. So we're moving in the right direction. And I think there is sustainability, but then there's also state of the art. So I think one of the questions I have, especially having worked with Mikhail closely, and I know a lot of folks have worked with Ali and other folks on my team, what do you believe is the role of a cloud provider in helping a startup start a AI business? And how have they helped? Or how have we helped?
Wow. Well, I mean, it's just think about starting an AI company today versus 15, 20 years ago, right? Being able to come up with an idea, test it on your laptop, create an AWS account, spool up resources, launch a web server, and put it behind an auto-scaling group so that if your site blows up, well, you have all the compute that it needs to be able to serve those pages, and you can have a business up and running within a weekend. That would have been much harder to do 15 years ago. Buying computer equipment and putting it in a rack in your garage or something to try to handle web traffic, or just training a machine learning model today. You can launch an EC2 instance that's backed by GPUs. You can train your model, run it for a couple days, then shut down the instance, and you have a trained model, and you paid what, $10 for it in terms of compute costs, versus having to go out, buy a computer with a powerful GPU and doing all that training at home. So there's a lot of flexibility that you have launching a company today with the backing of with different cloud providers.
No, like from my perspective, so 100% agree with that. But like basically the way we work is like we're sort of like use a hybrid of basically we actually have our own machines and we have like basically like so where I think like what cloud technologies is really bringing is like basically like agility and scalability, right? I mean, so basically like what I think is like super powerful is like I'll give you like a very like not even in the context of a startup, right? But like so I used to like run like a search relevance research at Walmart Labs, right? And so Walmart would never use AWS for obvious reasons, right? I mean, and so basically like we had our own servers, so like that was not elastic, right? I mean, so basically like we had a certain number of like servers and machines for you know like the people on the team, and literally people had to wait in line, right? I mean, so I was basically managing like basically you train your model and then you train your model and then you train your model, and basically like and that was slowing down like innovation, right? I mean, and so when you could have like just like temporarily scaled up when like maybe a few weeks later nobody was really like in need of anything, right? I mean, so I really believe like the supplementality, like the ability of like, oops, I have interesting research to do right now. I'm not gonna have to wait for 6 weeks for like everybody else to be done. Like this is really like golden in terms of like speeding up like innovation and speeding up like the ability for a company to scale, right? Because like, for example, like we do a lot of like really cool research. Usually everybody has new ideas all at once. And if we didn't have like cloud technologies to basically like support like the influx of new ideas, like would take forever to push new products to production.
Yeah, I think the cloud's been amazing. Like I remember back in the day of just like, yeah, like you're saying, just sticking like GPUs in some workstation. Yeah, it's just like repurposing gaming sort of graphics cards and trying to code CUDA, and then your CUDA would like overwrite all your other stuff and kill off your game, like your progress in your game as alongside it or something ridiculous. Whereas now I'm sat in Costa Rica and I was doing coding on AWS. Yeah, I set up some models and spun them off today. It's been unreal. Yes, cloud makes it possible. And if you're paying $10 as well for to run your first models, you're paying too much, because like the amount of free credits you get to set up, we didn't pay for AWS credits, or well, I think we flipped to Google at one point to get their free credits and then back to AWS. And along the way,
I'm sure Ari's thrilled about that.
$1 for our cloud.
Actually, before you joined, Ari and I were talking about how I had burned through all of our AWS credits, and I was asking how to get more.
It's a question I get a lot, and I think like just that, like, I mean, as an individual who's worked in the industry for the last 10 years, it's like what I want to help with is go to market, VC intros, cloud credits, right? Like we want to extend your runway so you have a scalable business and that you can actually like grow your business, and not just the exit, it's not the finances, it's actually like building a real business that works and has the right finances attached to it. That's what I care about. And I think we're getting a lot of questions here that are great questions. So I'm going to piggyback off that. They're asking, like, IW is asking, when it comes to establishing your team, which skills are hardest to find and hire for?
So I actually, like, maybe I can go first on that, right? I mean, so basically, like, first and foremost, and I think this is something everybody's going to agree with me. Like, I think like it's almost like it comes from the fact that people did not know how to like basically describe different data functions, right? And like for us, or like generally speaking, I think like it's not necessarily as hard as it might think to find people who know how to write models, right? I mean, and so even more so that nowadays, like you have a lot of like open source libraries, you have like people who have like worked on Kaggle challenges, and you have like the Kaggle challenges themselves that you can recycle, right? I mean, so it's not so much of a challenge anymore to find people who can build models, right? It's a challenge to find people who can build good pipelines that scale up, right? I mean, so I would say like the data engineering function typically is like a lot harder to find, and probably because the hype was a lot of the data on the data scientist role for many years, right? I mean, and so basically like I think the younger generation of people were like focusing on like gaining the skills to build models. As opposed to like becoming a data engineer, right? The other thing that we personally have a lot of challenge with is like, I think there is a need for a role, we call that like a field machine learning scientist, which is basically somebody who can talk business and talk to customers, but also understand the technology, right? And so something that I think is very sad is like the data scientists of like and the young generation basically like typically sees their role more as like being a math person, building models, and basically like being locked in front of a computer most of the time, and they're missing like the communicational aspect of like, you know, like understanding what the challenges are for the customer, basically explaining how the technology works in a way that a non-technical person can understand, and so on and so on, right? I mean, so I would say like for me, like the data engineering role and like the communicator, machine learning scientist or data scientist are like two positions I consider like to be really hard to hire for.
I will just piggyback off that too. Like we see a lot of like early stage founders doing all their ML like DevOps and infrastructure themselves at first. I mean, I've heard so many times like founders like, yeah, I have a box under my desk. And then they start scaling up and they start scaling their team and they start closing customers, and then they run into some serious challenges. So like with AWS, we like to work backwards. And the one reason, like one of the main reasons we launched SageMaker is to handle all that infrastructure and DevOps decision making. It's really hard for us, like early stage startup, to hire a great DevOps person and manage all their infrastructure. So that's like a quick plug, because that's one problem I see every single day talking to early stage startups.
Yeah, for us, the biggest challenge has always been in like people with like industry expertise in the industry. We're in pharmaceuticals and machine learning. I mean, it's the combination that's always the challenge and what's most valuable. And one thing is, I mean, for people out there who aren't thinking of starting their own companies, you know, really think about, you know, can you get a job in a big, like, you know, if you're not super sure what you want to do, definitely think about a job in a big company that's like industry specific, because the expertise and skills you're going to get there are going to be so valuable. You know, you're going to be super valuable for any startup out there in, you know, 3 or 4 years time when you understand the industry. Like, so I almost gate now machine learning applications on, has that person worked in pharmaceuticals for like 1 or 2 years, pretty much. And it's, you know, the big companies can afford to take people on and train them up who've not had that experience before. For startups, it's a lot harder, especially small ones.
So TL is asking, what are the biggest challenges for a startup trying to scale up?
No, I mean, like for me, like my perspective is like basically like I mean, it's the case for any startup. It's like basically like the product market fit, right? But like the product market fit for like a machine learning startup is like really complicated in a market where the non-machine learning people that you're trying to sell to, like it doesn't necessarily apply to us because we're selling like a machine learning solution to machine learning scientists, but like for the rest of the industry, like you're selling to people who have like crazy expectations. Like let's say like you're selling a solution for you know, like a chatbot or whatever, and then it's just like people expect magic, right? And so basically like it takes like additional iterations on getting the product right. So in my opinion, I see a lot of like machine learning startups fail because they are not doing enough of that, right? I mean, what you think you're starting this company for in the first place is almost of the time it's not going to be exactly what you need to build, right? Because you need to take feedback from your customers and so forth and so on. And it's hard, right? Because people like it's new for all of us. Like AI is like you know, like branching, like we're doing things could never be done before. So you don't necessarily like, you have to rely on the feedback loop that comes from the customer more than you need to for another startup, right? I mean, because
I'd add a real challenge with finding product market fit when you go vertical is not devolving into a consulting company. So not doing something that is so specific that it's hard to repeat across multiple clients in that vertical. And it can be very tempting to do that, because there's a company coming to you with a 7-figure check saying, if you just do this whole thing, like, great. And you want to do that because it's revenue and it'll make your investors happy. But then you're just doing everything. And what's the IP that you replicate across that? So that is a unique challenge that I think many companies grapple with, is to do something that speaks to a customer, but is repeatable across many customers.
Absolutely, yeah. So like I would agree with Sheldon there. Like there's like it's almost like two different like orthogonal routes. One, you figure out a product that scales across all companies instantly, so you get the full breadth of the market, very rapidly scale that. The alternative is you just disrupt that company itself. There's pretty much two orthogonal routes to that.
Yeah.
So we're getting a question on managing your stress, especially during COVID. And I mean, I've been part of the founding team at Figure 8, now Weights and Biases. I know what a pressure cooker is when you've raised, I think we raised $20 million at Weights and Biases, and there are metrics to hit and goals to hit, and you need to keep growing your user base. You have to keep growing your sales. Something's going to go wrong. It's not linear, as someone said earlier. It's like peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys. How do you manage that stress? And as maybe they're first-time entrepreneurs on that call, folks that want to be entrepreneurs, they might not have gone through that stress and understand that drive. How do you have self-care and self-love, even though things are changing and moving super quickly? And what are specific things you do to take care of yourselves?
So yeah, I'll start. So my wife's a psychiatrist, and so she's very big on mental health and maintaining mental health and so forth. Exercise, I think, is one. But I actually got an executive coach maybe a year ago, and it's almost like having a therapist or a psychiatrist who exists for that hour to service nothing but your problems. And as a founder, as a CEO, you're always thinking about everybody else's problems and their complaints and how you address their problems. And it requires compartmentalizing and putting your own needs aside a lot of the time. But it's equally important to make sure that somehow somebody is addressing those needs. So I found an executive coach, and I was quite fortunate with the match about a year ago, and it's been transformative for me because it's just my therapy for that week to work through whatever it is that's bothering me or stressful, and they're servicing your needs. So I can't recommend that highly enough to those of you that are contemplating starting this.
I'll just say +1 on that. I've worked with 5 executive coaches at this point, and it was so transformative being able to dig in, values conflicts, internal conflicts, growing as a human being, having that support. So if folks actually want to explore that, a lot of folks have recommendations, but happy to connect you to folks there.
There's a couple of books. Sorry, go ahead, Sam.
No, you're fine. Go for it.
I was going to say there's a couple of books that I could plug. I personally haven't yet worked with an executive coach. It is something that I actually really want to do, so I'll probably follow up with Sheldon and Ari afterwards for recommendations. But the closest thing that is maybe a little bit more affordable is a book called The Great CEO Within, written by an executive coach. Super, super tactical advice from managing your day, managing your team, setting priorities, very, very helpful advice that I think any founder should read. And the other thing that is helping me with stress management, I'm reading the book Why We Sleep, which you may have seen, and it's sort of made me realize just how undervalued sleep really is. And I've started tracking my sleep a little bit more, and the power of a full night's sleep is better than any antidepressant. And they've studied this. It's like more effective than antidepressants. So if you're a founder and you're not sleeping a full 8 hours or however much you need, that is a big fix that will help you a lot. It's certainly helping me.
For me, I guess I'll say 3 things. 1, try avoiding LinkedIn. It's founders are sort of models on Instagram with LinkedIn. It's oh God, he went and raised 50 million. I thought he had 5 million. What the hell is going on here? Second thing, I hang out with a bunch of normal, I like going to the pub. I go to the pub and I just hang out with normal people. I got normal friends that do not high intensity stress jobs, and I absolutely love them. And I love hearing about how one of my friends, Mike, was an electrician, and I just love his stories of how Barry got hit by 240 volts and shot across reception. And then the final thing I'd say, just don't take it too seriously. If the company fails, the sun will rise, and you've learned a lot.
I mean, I would actually extend on that. So actually, like for like a, you know, from a pragmatic like standpoint, right? What I believe is like the reason why we are stressed as like you know, like a founder is basically like you don't want to allow yourself to like have anything go wrong, right? I mean, so basically like for me, like when I started out, it's like basically like I cannot allow for this customer not to close or for this feature not to be on time and so forth and so on. So once you embrace the fact that stuff is going to go wrong anyways, and it's okay, and basically like without even going to the point that the company has to fail, but like basically you will be disappointed about certain things, right? I mean, like some product, like product you might launch might not work out, or like an employee you wanted to keep is gonna leave the company or whatever. You're just like, for me, like the best medicine is just like taking things step by step. Don't be too harsh on yourself if something goes wrong in the long term, because like I think after a few months of doing this, you realize like even like some of those things you feel like if this fails, I'm done for, the company's gonna fail and I'm not gonna be able to recover from it, and you recover anyways, right? I mean, basically it's like, okay, I hire somebody else, that person is even better, right? I mean, this sort of things, right? I mean, so it's just like taking it easy step by step and accept the fact that some things will go wrong and be okay with that is, in my opinion, like the best way of like dealing with like artists, managing like the influx of stress in the first place.
So I know we've talked about a lot of stuff. I want to end with Canadian incubators and accelerators, Canadian VCs. I know we haven't touched on the Canadian angle since we're at the Toronto Machine Learning Summit. What are your impressions on the Canadian accelerators, incubators? I know some of you have been through them, Creative Destruction Lab, Mila. There are a bunch of Mars, there are a bunch of great ones. Would you guys go again? How did they help you? And then second question in there is like, would you take seed money from Canadian VCs, US VCs? How would you think about that? And specifically for the folks who are Canada based, I'd like you guys to start.
The accelerators have been great. Like CDL is super competitive, but it's an amazing accelerator for those who participate in it. I was in the Next Canada accelerator as well, which was, I did the Next Founders group, which was an amazing experience for just things like mindset, thinking like an entrepreneur, building a network of other entrepreneurs in Canada. Canada has some really great startup talent, some really great incubators and accelerators, and I encourage every founder to try to get into one of these and to participate in them. I've also heard it said that Canada is a great place to raise seed money, but then, you know, go to the US afterwards. Like the big money is to be had from US VCs.
So I'll echo that. We went through the Creative Destruction Lab in 2018. Can't recommend it highly enough. The network that it gives you and the focus it can instill. We also got into the Lazaritas Scale Up program a year ago. So this was founded by Mike Lazaritas, the founder of BlackBerry and RIM. Really incredible network that they've managed to put together with Canadian startups. On the VC front, this is going to sound somewhat counterintuitive because one of our seed co-leads was Inovia, who's Canadian. But a startup is an inherently risky venture by definition, especially one at the early stage. And Canadians in general don't like risk. So I remember having Canadian VCs at the pre-seed stage asking for 5-year financial projections. And it's like, I don't even know what the next 6 months look like. Whereas I found American VCs just get the risk and get the reward of the risk. So I would just approach that and make sure that, you know, you're pitching to VCs that understand this is inherently risky. And I find, you know, American VCs get that a little bit better than Canadians.
So
yeah. Oh,
go for it,
okay.
Sam.
Just both of them. Yeah, CDL absolutely. Like we wouldn't be here without that program. It was dead funny. So it's funny you mentioned the Canadians and risk actually. So we had this experience where one of the guys at Innovation Endeavors on CDL we had a video call with him and he was like, "Oh, I like your idea. I definitely think you guys can come down to the Valley and raise a bunch of money." So we'd been trying to raise in Canada, no luck. Went to Silicon Valley. They were like, "Oh, we like your idea. We think it's great, but it's a bit too early stage. Go and talk to my friends in Canada who can perhaps do a very small check for you guys." So we went back to Canada with like the Silicon Valley sort of, you know, approval behind us a little bit and managed to raise a bunch of capital. But actually our first check came from Inovia and no, they were Absolutely, yeah. Well, the first people trying to give us check Novia, they were super high risk, but went for it. So yeah.
So I'm not part of like the Canadian like scene, like so we're like based in Silicon Valley, right? But like something that I cannot recommend it enough, like so we talk about VC and accelerators, right? We actually have like a decent number of like and a fairly like an important fraction of the investments in the company so far come from like angel operators, right? I mean, so basically like something like I think is like it's been super successful for us, like the right mix of like actual like institutionalized like VCs who can like back you up with money and like more like standardized advice on like how to scale a startup and so forth and so on. But I feel like it's just equally important to also have like passionate people willing to put their own money. So basically the difference you're gonna get from like getting angel investors is like these people, like if they give you like and they write you even like a $25,000 check or whatever, it's not a lot of money. You're gonna get that from the scale of like having multiple angels, right? But these people care about this because it's their own money, right? And so if they invested in this, it's basically like they believe in you, they believe in the idea. And like generally speaking, I would say like I get more introductions to customers from my angel investors than I do from my VCs, right? I mean, I get like more like they probably understand the product better because you have a lot of operators that I would actually use the product themselves, right? I mean, and so I think there's like a right balance, but I don't think necessarily of like VCs as being the only avenue to raise money and to get advice. Right?
So on that note, we need to cut it off. I know we could go for hours here with this group. I want to thank Mikhail, Jennifer, Sheldon, and Sam for joining us today. Dave, thank you so much for hosting us at the Toronto Machine Learning Summit. This video will be shared. I'll put my email in the box. We're happy to help with it. I'm happy to help with anything that has to do with AWS, credits, VC intros, go-to-market advice, because we really care about helping startups grow, and we're here for you. So thank you for joining. This was awesome, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and thank you, Ari.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.